Hello, hello, this is Irene with SaugaTalks, and I hope everyone doing well, because I am exceptionally privileged today. I am so happy to introduce my esteemed guest, Debra Rue. Debra, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show and for everything you're doing to change the world. I appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, absolutely, because I'm so excited about the topic. So we're gonna talk about tech for good and inclusivity and sustainable development goals. And there's so much we can collectively do with the help of technology. So, Deborah, where do you think we are today, in terms of, yes, using technology, making people's life better and easier, hopefully at some point?
Right. Well, we learned a lot about technology and who had access and who didn't have access during this pandemic that unfortunately we're still going through. And so it's sad that, a lot of people that are disenfranchised through no fault of their own, when we don't humanize technology, were left out, and it was really hard to watch. 40% of the children in the United States at the beginning of the pandemic could not, they couldn't really go to school because of technology issues. So we've been talking about why it's so important in tech for good, tech for all, to make sure everyone's included. And bottom line, we just have to humanize technology because technology is being used for humans. So let's make sure that technology works for all humans and be more thoughtful about how we're designing it so that everybody can be included. And you mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals. Well, as a world, we have come together under the leadership of the United Nations and we've come up with 17 goals: clean water, end poverty, gender equality, things that are really important. And I love the 17th goal because the 17th goal is partnerships, coming together to work collaboratively to make the world a better place for more people, and really allowing people to have their best lived experience regardless of who they are, where they come from, who they love, what color they are. Let's start being a little bit kinder to each other.
Absolutely. This is the ambitious goal. This is totally, makes sense to most humans, right? But at the same time, what are the ways you think we're gonna get there? Because let's talk about tools, okay? AI makes us incredibly productive, right? It reaches beyond what we humans can process or able to accomplish, right? Raising our productivity, right? Giving more opportunities. So where do you see this is going in ways that there's tons of applications for doctors, for teachers, educators out there? So do you see, the fast progress there, or there are challenges, I'm sure?
Yeah, there are challenges. And that's a great, great question because before the pandemic, the thing I was worried about the most was artificial intelligence. And I love technology. Let's keep doing technology, but once again, technology needs to be designed for humans. And so we were really worried about the lack of data sets for artificial intelligence because most of the data sets that we have, it's just a reality and not complaining, but are on white males. Even on white women like myself, there's a lack of data. And then you look at other diverse groups, LGBT, Black and brown people. If you're looking from a U.S. lens, Asian Americans, African Americans. We don't have data sets on anybody but this one group. White males. Now we're changing that, and there's been a lot of changes actually, and the pandemic sort of helped. I know when we were fighting in the United States, the past president went after TikTok, and I have my opinion about why that happened. But I read an article about why Microsoft wanted to buy the American part of TikTok, and it was for the data, because people are putting out there all kinds of data, all kind of videos, all kind of, sometimes they're nonsense type videos, but a lot of this data is also very powerful, and it can teach artificial intelligence what it means to be a human right now. And so I'm hoping we're going to continue to really focus on making sure the artificial intelligence has the right data sets. And I'll give you one example. And this is known, so I'm not bad mouthing Amazon, but Amazon used an artificial intelligence tool to improve their hiring. And one thing that they found was because of the way the artificial intelligence was designed, it was actually leaving women engineers out, a lot of technical women out. And when they realized it, they stopped using it because obviously they did not want to do that. But it's things like that. So we need corporations really standing up and saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure it has the right data sets. But so it's a work in progress, but it's something we need to be mindful about.
Absolutely. Yes, Deborah, thank you. Thank you for bringing those important points. So, what about digital divide? Because, yes, billions of people still do not have access to the broadband connection to the internet. So, what can we do collectively?
I know, and it's very sad. A point. Once again, I'm joining from Virginia in the United States, but there are 330 million Americans. 163 million Americans do not have access to high speed, dependable, affordable internet. Oh my gosh, that's more than 50% of the United States. So a lot of people think that access to real, internet speed and stuff like that is just problems in developing countries. It's not. It's not. With our infrastructure in the United States being old, we have a real problem. I know that the governor of my state, Virginia, just made an announcement that we were going to spend, hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that people in the Commonwealth of Virginia have high speed access. But the problems with these issues is it is widening the digital divide. I would also just give an example. It was sad for me to learn that refugees spend an average of 20 years in a refugee camp. That means some people are being born and they spend their childhood, their teen years, their early adult in a refugee camp. In the past, when the Red Cross, the United Nations, other organizations trying to help people that are in trouble would ask them, what do you need? They would say, we need water, clean water, we need food, we need clothing. Well, you know what they ask for now, Irene? They ask for good Wi-Fi because almost all of them have some kind of phones or we can get them phones. But if they have Wi-Fi, they can try to get themselves out of this problem. And it is important to note that many, many people that are refugees are also people with disabilities because disabilities covers a lot, including when we're traumatized. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which there are estimates that 65% of Americans are going to have PTSD after we hopefully all, we hopefully survive this pandemic. But that's not just the US. Those are just happen to be numbers I know. So the digital divide for people that are disenfranchised, people that are poor, people part of communities like disabilities or aging people, people over 65, the digital divide is widening. And I think we as society should be very concerned about that.
Absolutely, absolutely, Deborah. So you mentioned education. Okay. And how do you think we're doing now? Because we're into 2021, right?
Well, I think we learned a lot. I really do. And I hope and I do believe we're going to continue to learn from these lessons. I know that before the pandemic, I talked often on my shows and my platforms about, how isolating people with disabilities become, especially people with certain types of disabilities, very isolating. And society disables people by not letting them meaningfully contribute to society. People with disabilities, they want to work, they want to be taxpayers, they want to use technologies. But if we're not designing with everybody's needs in mind, we're leaving large amounts of the populations out. So we learned a lot. Like you said, teachers learned a lot, students did, parents. I think a lot of people got why technology is so important and why we need reliable Wi-Fi to go with it, because it's got to be looked at from the lens of ICT, internet, communications, and technology. I can have the best technology in the world, but if I don't have the right communications and the right Wi-Fi to, get out and use my technology, it may as well just be a paperweight. So we have to, the legislators, the leaders, everybody has to really understand that everybody should have access to education for all. But we can't have education for all if we haven't made sure that technology and communications are accessible as well, because it's only technology for all if you happen to have the money, or you happen to be in a place where you can get Wi-Fi, or if. And so, unfortunately, the digital divide is widening, and we saw it during the pandemic. But I do hope we continue to learn from the lessons that we learned. And, for example, another one is telemedicine and telehealth. We've been wanting to do that forever, but during the pandemic, we actually started doing it. And so I don't want to go back. If I have something I want to talk to my doctor about, I want to do it on Zoom, like or online. I don't want to have to go in, drive there, take my time, drive back. So I think society learned a lot, but I hope society doesn't forget it. One more point, Irene. Actually, corporations, employers realized that their employees were more productive at home. Huh, maybe work-life balance is good for all of us, including your productivity.
Absolutely. You took my next question, Deborah. You're so intuitive. Telehealth. I did want to ask you about this specifically because, like you said, doctors adapted, patients adapted. And guess what? In some of the areas where top-notch hospitals and doctors not available, simply still in the US, of course, other parts of the world including, right? What a great opportunity to access to the best specialists, don't you think?
Yes, yes, it's just mind-boggling, and I think there's so much that we all will benefit from. We are not on the roads as much when we're doing telehealth, and sometimes you need to go and see the doctor in person, but sometimes you don't.
Not all the
Sometimes,
time, right? Sometime, but not all the time.
yeah, not to mention like flu seasons. I don't want to go into the doctor's office during flu season. I don't want to catch the flu, whether I've gotten a flu shot or not. I don't want to catch it. So it's very logical. And also, people that are, fighting cancer or have very severe disabilities, it's very difficult to get into the doctor's office in some cases. So I just hope we continue, and I believe we will, because I think a lot of people are understanding that it makes sense. And once again, it supports the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and it supports this beautiful living planet we're part of. You know, because we're not unnecessarily putting toxins in the air. So I hope we continue to learn from it, and we continue to use it to train our doctors and to train our engineers and to train us to be better at what we're doing. So I'm hopeful about it.
Absolutely. To me, what's very exciting, we're seeing here and there some futuristic technologies, some emerging technologies being implemented, like AR, VR even, right? It's not mainstream yet, but you probably saw this video from World Economic Forum, how kids learning about flood risks and how they train themselves, right? What are the safety measures? So
Yeah, there's so many amazing things that we can do. There's so many. And, technology, I realize a lot of people think has really disrupted our life. But once again, how would we do this pandemic without technology? I know a lot of people don't like to, criticize Amazon, but I don't know how we could have done it without home deliveries and things like that. And we had the infrastructure set up so that it wasn't as bad as it could have been. It was still bad, it was very bad. And it still is in a lot of places, including it's still ongoing. But the opportunity to continue to enhance our lives and allow people to participate. And by the way, sometimes when you're doing shows, you'll hear a baby cry, or you'll hear a dog barking, or somebody will come to the door, or my husband has dementia, and so my husband has actually wandered into the room when I'm on live shows before. It's like, ooh. But the reality that used to be, but now it's just a normal part of being. We have families, so I think we learned a lot about how technology could support humans. Technology, and once again, communications, got to deal with the digital divide and the digital inclusion. But if we're not thoughtful about designing technology that everybody can use, and we like to make people bad, like the older people are so dumb because they don't understand technology. Well, that's not very fair, and it's not true either, because we all can learn, but technology needs to be designed with human-centric policies and human-centric design. So I think we have to be committed to making sure everybody can be included, including with the technology. And right now, we've made some progress during the pandemic, but I hope we remember what we've learned and continue to enhance the learnings.
You brought the amazing point. So humans, but at the same time, let's talk about economic implications. We kind of touched on those, right? How do we provide more opportunities for those who are entering work life, those who are mid-career, and those who are close to retirement?
Right. And those that need to be reskilled, because people do need to be reskilled. The world has changed. Gosh, it's changed so fast. I mean, I'm 60 plus, and I remember we had, when I was 3, we got a black and white TV, and we thought we were whoa, So it's like, if you just think about how technology has changed in all of our lives, even the younger digital native lives, technology's it just changes. It's changing so fast. But if we don't commit to really caring about how does technology is designed, and we don't care about making sure the data sets are right. And I want to tell you a silly story. It's a short, silly story that I've said before on air, but I just love it because I think it's very impactful. So Mattel is the creator of Barbie, and Barbie's now, I forget how old Barbie is. I know she's probably 60, because I got a Barbie when I was a little girl. But they decided to give one Barbie artificial intelligence. Okay, how fun. Okay, cool. So they used a team of AI programmers to teach this Barbie to correspond with human beings. And so then they announced it at a conference, and there was a little girl at the conference that was going to get to talk to Barbie. Yay! So Barbie appropriately starts the conversation with this little girl saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the little girl said, "I want to be a computer scientist." And Barbie responded saying, "Oh, well, haven't you thought of a career in fashion?" Okay. Now I hear you making, drawing in your breath, because you immediately know little girls can be computer engineers. But then what they realized, the crowd got really mad at them, was that they had used a small team of male AI engineers to teach Barbie to talk. Any woman would know what is wrong with that. By the way, we are great computer engineers, great computer scientists, but the men hadn't thought about it from that perspective. So you have to have diverse people. You have to have diverse people in your workforce, as designers, as coders, as programmers. And don't tell me you can't find diverse people, because you're not looking if you can't. And so it's very important to remember, that the best way to make sure everybody's included is to make sure you have a diverse workforce that are working on these things. Don't just put 5 white men to program AI. No, no. Let's take the time to look at this from diversity. And it's good for your brand. It's good for society. But we also, as society, are not going to accept that people are making those kind of mistakes. And, that a lot of people are still talking about that little mistake Mattel made. Now, Mattel's done so many wonderful things. They have, for my community, they have Barbie dolls in wheelchairs. They have Barbie dolls using walkers. They have Barbie doll. So they're trying to include us. It was just a mistake, but it's a mistake we all need to learn from. We need to make sure people are included, and women too. We say women are the largest minority group, Irene. Well, there are actually more women in the world than men. We're actually the majority. What we're treated like minorities. We're not invited to boards, corporate boards. We don't get the same funding access. We're not paid as much still. And that's just women. Now let's talk about women of color. Let's talk about women with disabilities, women that are part of the LGBT, and the numbers drop and drop and drop. So we still have a lot of work to do in society.
I hear you. I hear you. You did mention, of course, few critical points that affect all of us, right? Living in society. So at the same time, how do we close those barriers, or remove them rather, in a way that you mentioned corporate world. Okay, you mentioned opportunities, right? And what do you think will benefit the society as a whole if we implement, again, technology is not a silver bullet. Okay, we're there to create the rules that technology will support, don't you think?
I do think, and I think that's a great point. And I think it's also worth noting that we are an aging society. And when I say we, I mean the world. Because I focus on aging and disability inclusion because the reality is, as we age in these biological bodies, we don't hear as well, we don't see as well, maybe we don't think as fast, maybe we don't move the same. It's just a reality of being a biological human being. I believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but that's a whole nother thing. But and so it because of the aging of society, I know that there are 70 million Americans that are over the age of 57 now. And so if we are not considering technology and accessibility and designing for humans, you could be leaving out large segments of the population. But once again, even in countries like Africa or in the Middle East, which we typically don't think of as having large aging societies, they do. They do. The numbers are staggering. Japan is actually their society is aging faster than everybody else. And by 2050, it's predicted that 50% of their population will be over the age of 50. So what's wrong with that? Well, we still don't want our children working, okay? Children should be able to go to school and have fun. Let's not put children back in the workforce. And after a certain age, if people want to retire, they should be allowed to retire. But what does that what happens to the workforce then? So if you have in the States 330, million Americans, well, you take away, 70 million of them, and then you take away the children, it's a smaller workforce that is actually supporting everybody else, with their taxes and social security payments and blah, blah, blah. And so if you look at the lens of the US, but we have to understand that as societies continue to age, that we want to make sure that we are looking at technology and human design and SDGs and inclusion, because if you don't think it impacts you, it does. And it definitely impacts people you love. And if it doesn't impact you now, it's going to. It's going to. And I don't mean that as a threat. It's just part of our life. We're born, we live our lives, and at some point we die. So it's just so important that we rethink inclusion and what it means, and what it means to society for everybody to be more meaningfully included. We've got to be a lot more thoughtful about these issues, which is why I appreciate what you're doing with your talk show.
Wonderful. Thank you, Debra, so very much. So we do live longer, right? We do live better.
Right?
So, and by the way, 60 is a new 30. Do you know that?
That's right. That's what I'll say.
Exactly. So no excuses, okay? We're going to have work longer. We're going to have to take care of ourselves to stay healthier longer, right? With the help of technology. So no, thank you for bringing those important points. Totally. So switching gears again a little bit to our work life, because how many hours a day we spend working, in our adult productive years? Okay.
Right.
A lot. So again, technology is a great equalizer. That's just my opinion,
I
because
agree.
right, hiring people remotely, being able to interview people, to recruit them and to promote them and just live online, it's a huge plus. At the same time, again, we know the challenges. All right. So how do you think we can equip ourselves better? Because there are tons of coaches there saying that, hey, you can be better online than you are in real life, but yet, yeah, it's got to somehow correlate.
It does. And I think that once again, we mentioned the productivity went up. And it's interesting also watching, because I was talking to a friend of mine who is a very sought after technologist. She also is an African American engineer, a woman, so she checks a lot of the tick box, right? And her employer told her she had to come back to the office. And she was very upset. She's like, I don't want to come back to the office. I'm more productive. I'm a better mother. I'm able to support my family and myself better. And I said, well, it sounds like you have some options. And so what she did was she went and got another job. And the big corporation that she did work for, oh, they're sick about losing her. But employers have to understand we will leave you if you are not listening to the needs of society. And so we know that, and not every single job works well with teleworking, but a lot of jobs do. So and if you are an employer that's saying, well, if I can't see you, I don't know if you're working, then you are not looking at your employees in the right way, because employees should know what you expect of them, when it's supposed to be done, and they should be judged on that, not just whether or not they're sitting in the office. Because it's a different way of looking at the world. But I think it's just very important for employers, especially employers that want to be employers of choice, to understand all these moving parts. These are not, sometimes people think these are just nice to have conversations. They're not. Society has changed. Society's expectations are continuing to change. And if you, as an employer, are not paying attention to those things, you are not going to get the best talent. And sometimes the best talent are people with disabilities, because just because we decided as society to leave people out doesn't mean they can't add value. Because when we're solving a problem, if we all have the same life experiences. Everybody that I work with looks like me, around my same age, grew up in the same area. We have common experiences. And you start adding people that look differently from you, and they come from different cultures, they have different backgrounds. Maybe they can't use their eyes, or maybe they can't hear as well as you, or maybe they speak differently from you, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Once again, it's what you said, Irene. Technology is a great equalizer. So if technology is created, once again, so that all humans can use it, technology will overcome things that might have been barriers. And I'll give you an example. If I'm in a wheelchair and my entire team all has to come into the office and it's on the third floor, but the building isn't accessible, then I don't really feel like a part of the team. Whereas if I'm working from home like the rest of the team, I can join Zoom, or live stream, or StreamYard, or any of these tools, and I become one of the peers. And you can't always tell that a person has a disability. And especially, and it was interesting and at first in the pandemic, when we all went online, we were like, wait, where's the captions? Where are the captions? Well, captions certainly are essential for people that are deaf or are hard of hearing. But captions actually help everybody, especially if we can capture those captions, because now I have a transcript of everything that happened on that call. Oh, I don't have to take as good a notes or things like that. So we just need to keep remembering what it means to be human, and what we want to solve, and how we need to help each other. And that technology, once again, great equalizer if we bother to make them accessible for everybody. But I think we just have to keep saying over and over again, representation matters. You talked about, inviting people to the table. Sometimes we have to actually give up our seat at the table to make sure an underrepresented group gets a seat at the table. And somebody said, no, 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 just pull up extra chairs. Well, the reality is we don't pull up extra chairs, or if we do, it's sort of seen. Often it's just like, we're not really trying. So right now, I believe society's expectations of us have changed, and society expects us to try harder.
Totally, totally. You hit again on so many important points that, I want to pick just on one. Captions. All right. I learned English just reading captions. So think about languages, think about those divisions, right? Mm-hmm.
Right, right. And another really good point, Irene, is the United States, we convinced the world that English is the language of business. Okay. Well, I only speak one language, so I'm glad it's English, but what if it's not? So, as you just said, not knowing English can be a real barrier to joining the workforce in a more meaningful way. I mean, you can do it if people speak the same language you do. So, technology, I think that's a great point. Captions helped you learn to speak English. But I remember I used to turn on captioning when I would watch this silly show called Swamp People, because even though they're speaking English, they're speaking it with a Cajun accent that I didn't always understand what they were saying, even though we speak the same language. So it helps with accents and stuff. And it just reduces some of the barriers. There's so many positive things that captioning and speech to text to speech, all of those things that were created for people with disabilities so that we could be included. And when I say we, I identify as a person with disabilities. I have ADHD, as do about 65% of entrepreneurs in the world. So I'm neurodiverse and a protected class. I am a mother of a daughter with Down syndrome that's 34 years old, and she's a very complicated woman, multifaceted. And then sadly, my husband is aged into dementia because of a childhood. He was hit by a drunk driver when he was a child and sustained a horrible traumatic brain injury, died on the spot. They brought him back. But as he's aged, his brain is aging much more dramatically just because of the really bad traumatic brain injury. So I don't say that in a way because my family's broken, because it's not. But I do have a family of human beings, and so, why make people feel bad? If somebody loses their sight, but they're an engineer and they've been doing wonderful work, you're going to take away their job too and their technology because you're too lazy to make sure the technology works for everybody. And I know I'm being mean, but I'm so tired of technologists not making sure that technology is designed for human beings. And the reality is we're all going to live this one way or the other. So let's just make sure everybody can be included, because there is a lot of work for us all to do. We have so much work to do to make sure that we even survive, the climate changes and the stuff that are happening and the pandemic. So let's let technology benefit human beings.
Fantastic, fantastic, Debra. So I know you do a lot to bring those two worlds together, right? Business and entrepreneurial development, you name it, right? With human element to it, because you just portrayed a fantastic picture that we're all a minority in some way. Okay, it depends how you look at the world, right? I'm an immigrant, and again, I came to this country not speaking English and thinking about me hosting a talk show in this language. That's kind of right beyond what I was thinking about, right? So all I'm saying is, we human beings, we adapt, we develop, and we can reach enormous heights, right? With the tools and technology available.
I agree. And, I'm glad that you did that, because you have a beautiful accent. And it's really important for us to really embrace and support your lived experiences. We're supposed to have obstacles in our lives, we're supposed to have challenges, but let's not make challenges that don't need to be there. We're going to have problems. We're going to have pandemics that happen. We're going to fuss and fight with each other. But let's make sure everybody can be included, because people want to contribute, and society needs us all to contribute. Society needs it. We, once again, if anybody's looked around, we got a lot of work to do, but we do it better when we bring in diverse people from different backgrounds. Where you were born is different from where I was born, so you're going to have different experiences, and you're going to solve problems differently because of those experiences as well. One of the problems you solved was learning a new language using captioning. You were a problem solver. Those are the kind of people that employers want to hire, problem solvers.
Totally, totally. Wow, Debra, this is so enriching conversation. Absolutely. I use a lot when I speak about technology with my guests, I use a lot of word empathy.
Yes, yes. I think empathy is a very, very important word. And, you don't have to have sympathy. I know with the community of people with disabilities, a lot of people, will, be sympathetic. You don't need to be sympathetic. You should be empathetic. I have a friend of mine that lost his eyesight due to a childhood accident when he was 5. And he said to me, it is inconvenient not to be able to see. It is inconvenient. He said, I can't drive until, we get more driverless cars. And he said, I have to have somebody else read the menu for me, because it's not presented in the right way. But it's more of an inconvenient. It's not a tragedy. He still added great value, still adds great value in his life. He was a director at the National Science Foundation. He was a doctor. He was an amazing, talented man. So let's really rethink what it means to be human, because there are so many people that speak differently, maybe because they have cerebral palsy or they're nonverbal or they have a different language and so they have a thick accent. But that doesn't mean they can't contribute. It also doesn't mean they're stupid. We used to say deaf, dumb, and blind. Oh, they're deaf. Well, no, just because you're deaf, you're not dumb. Just because you're blind, stop. No, people are people, and we want to contribute, and there's value. Once again, I know I keep saying it, but there's value in the diversity. There's real value, and we have studies to prove that as well. And it also is not expensive to accommodate individuals with disabilities. It's not. So, and how do you accommodate them? Well, why don't you ask them? You want to hire somebody that's deaf. Well, make sure that you have a sign language interpreter for the interview. That would be appropriate. And what tools do they need to be successful as an employee for you and to be promoted? Give them a chance and they will change the world for your brand. They will.
This is enormously enriching conversation, Debra. So thank you so very much for your time. Before I let you go today, Debra, can we maybe finish with few takeaways? Because we touched on a lot of different subjects, right? But for the audiences. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I also want to say that I've created a new nonprofit. I'm creating it with my team. So I have Rue Global Impact, which is like a think tank, a strategy company that helps corporations, governments, UN agencies include people with disabilities. But Billion Strong, billion-strong.org, is the first global nonprofit to focus on the identity of persons with disabilities. There's 1.3 billion people with disabilities in the world. And then you look at the intersections, LGBT community with disabilities, women with disabilities, Black and brown people with disabilities, and the numbers go up. Or if you love somebody with a disability or you acquire a disability. So we created Billion Strong, billion-strong.org, to celebrate our lived experiences with disabilities and try to flip the narrative so that we can be proud of who we are. We can be proud of, I have ADHD and it makes my life, it complicates my life, but it also allows me to get a lot of work done because I don't know when to stop working. They used to call it AAA personality, but I'm not broken. I just use my brain differently. And so we need to rethink in society what the barriers that we create for each other, because we create terrible barriers for each other, and why we're creating those barriers. Why are we not including people that are brown and Black? Why are we treating women like minorities? Why do you care who somebody loves if it's the wrong sex? I don't know why love is ever bad. And so I think continuing to realize society is changing, paying attention to the changes, understanding that as an employer, society's expectation that you hire a diverse workforce, which includes people with disabilities, and then also at the same time, technology and design and communications. Make sure that you are not accidentally designing out large segments of people, because we really are all in this together and we're stronger together, but we have to support each other and support, people all over the world, because we just are stronger together.
Thank you, Debra, so very much for this talk today. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for everything you're doing and for caring about the topic, because sometimes we all have a tendency to just speak in a vacuum and to each other. People say, you're preaching to the choir instead of the audience. And we need to all talk about this. So I really, really appreciate that you took the time to, reach out and want to talk about these conversations, because I think they're very important. So thank you, Irene. Thank you so much.